What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka Unique Mazique. I am the hardest working man in sports and gaming, coming to you here for Operation Sports, and we're talking about eSports Boxing Club. Man, I'm going to tell you guys right now, we've seen so many teases of a return of the sweet science to the gaming world, but right now, this looks like this is the real deal. We've been covering this here on the channel. My man Prince Digital has been doing a great job talking to you guys about it. But I reported on this on Forbes after I spoke to and had an opportunity to speak to Steel City's studio head. And Steel City Interactive is the studio that is developing eSports Boxing Club. So I got an opportunity to speak to Ash Habib, and I've spoken to him on a few other occasions, and he's talked to me about the game and just the development of it. And he gave me some exclusive screenshots. I'm sure by this time they probably spread around to some other outlets, but I put it out actually on Forbes initially. And there's a lot going on. A lot of it you've probably already heard about, maybe even in some of our videos. We'll retract and kind of go over a little bit of that. The 6 legends that were unveiled: Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, Jack Dempsey, Jack Johnson, Floyd Patterson, and Rocky Marciano. They really, came with some heavy hitters, no pun intended, with the reveal of those particular fighters. But there's some other things that I want to talk to you about in regards to the development of this game, just to give you a little bit of a glimpse inside of it. And we have some screenshots, and I'm going to show you that were also in that particular article. But Ash Habib, I think it's important that you guys know a little bit about him. It may shape some of what you expect from this game. He actually is an avid boxing fan. Their studio is based in the UK, and you guys, if you're a boxing fan, you know how big the sweet science is in the UK. You could argue that right now it's way bigger and way more popular, I would say, than it is in the United States. So he's an avid boxing fan, and he's also a former competitive gamer on Pro Evolution Soccer. So if you were to ask people who wanted a boxing video game to come back out or to return, if you would ask them for the profile of the person that you would want heading up that particular effort, they might have given you something like what Ash Habib actually is. He's a boxing fan, and he actually is a gamer. And he's a competitive sports gamer. So he'll automatically come in with some understanding of what that competitive balance and skill gap is supposed to look like. So, and obviously we're just talking about like player to player, head to head type of competition, which is a big part of it. But esports boxing goes a little bit deeper than that. So we'll talk little bit about that. So I thought that was something that I don't know how many people have expressed or have discussed as they've talked about this game. But I thought that was a pretty important piece to know a little something about the person that's heading up these efforts. So I got a few screenshots. I'm going to start off with this one here. It's in black and white, and we'll go back and look at these again shortly, and I'll go over some bullet points about the game. But this one is Joe Frazier, and it is renowned cutman Jamie Sheldon is in the back here. And you see as the Empire Pro Tape t-shirt on, there are several boxing related brands, gyms, venues, and other things like that are licensed. But this Joe Frazier render is pretty solid, and the black and white filter makes it look even cooler. So I was told by Ash Habib that this black and white filter is available whenever you use legendary fighters. So that in itself is really cool. If you remember like the NBA 2K greatest challenge or greatest player ever challenge, or greatest of all time challenge, where they had, when you played with some of the older teams, you would play in the black and white or some other type of aged sort of a filter. So the fact that they have this available is pretty cool. I'm hoping that there is a sepia tone, or one of the ones that are more associated with the 1970 style, seeing as though you do have Joe Frazier in there. I'm hoping that's available as well, but the black and white filter is an outstanding touch to have here. So and as I said, the render, the lighting, and the shadows there are really good. The next picture I'm going to show you is of Lyndon Arthur. Now, Lyndon Arthur is a UK based light heavyweight. He's actually the guy that's on the thumbnail of this video, and you saw the front facing view of him, and you can see the detail on the tattoos that are on his chest. There's a young girl, might be his child, I'm not exactly sure. It looks like her birth date or something is there. There's another script there on the left side of his chest. And just overall, you just look at the muscle texture, the lighting there, that's really, really good. But then this next picture is actually the back of him, and so there's another script on his right shoulder blade, and you can see the tattoos on his left arm. The only thing I'll say, while this looks fantastic, and I'm really like totally nitpicking by even saying this, like we're talking about pointing out a small dent in a Rolls Royce, but if you've seen Lyndon Arthur, then you know he might be a little bit too muscular, but maybe not. I don't know. It just depends on the take. He just looks a little wider maybe than he actually looks. But even saying something like that is a compliment to the way that the game looks, because if you are even critiquing it on that level, then that means that what you're looking at has already generated something in your head that says this is photorealistic level graphics that we're looking at. So the only time you don't find yourself critiquing the body types in Fortnite and in games with less than realistic style models. So if I'm looking at it that way, it's because the images that have already been shown have already taken me to that place. So as I said, it still looks ridiculous. Even if they didn't touch it ever again and leave it exactly as it is, it would still look fantastic. So this next picture is a color version and a front on look of Joe Frazier. And on his left, you'll see Henry Wharton, and you may not know him. He is a renowned trainer based in UK, and he was a fighter also. So this one shows off the way Joe Frazier will look. It looks like doing pre-fight introductions. You can see the great lighting here. They've dropped the house lights, and so there's a blue light effect in the back. It looks pretty solid. One thing you got to realize, whenever you see a sports video game and they're using a legend of someone who's deceased like Joe Frazier, they obviously don't have the ability to scan them. So you're working with artists who are literally drawing this head and bringing it to life. So that, when you consider that, when you're able to get close to the actual way that the person looked, it's a pretty big deal. So that's that. Now, in addition to the fighters, like I said, with Henry Wharton, you do have a healthy list of trainers and cut men that are going to be involved in this game. Ben Davidson's in the game. There's a few other ones as well. I'm going to tell you one of the biggest things that Ash told me when we spoke this week and made me really excited about it, because his roster seems to be growing by leaps and bounds. But Steel City Interactive is working with the Zone's Todd Grisham to recruit fighters. And I'll quote what he said, and I put this in the article. There's a strong focus on fighters from the United States, Mexico, and the Far East. So they are right now, a lot of their roster are UK-based fighters, and it makes sense from from just a geographical standpoint where the studio is and what have you. And they've also had some issues during the development because of the pandemic. So flying fighters in and getting access to them to scan them and stuff. But the fact that they have someone like Todd Grisham working with them with the Zone and talking to fighters to help expand this roster is a big deal. They've also partnered with Grand Enterprises because they want to expand the scope of the game. When this game was first announced, and like the first time we ever talked about it, it was looked at as more like an indie game, like a small time thing. And it had this, I want to say, like a smaller time, hardcore fan sort of a following. But now, as we start to see, quite honestly, more money being pumped into this whole project and larger firms and larger organizations getting involved, it's going to a different level. So they had a little bit of a pre-alpha out, and people, I guess, got an opportunity to try it out, or they got a chance to look at the trailer and witness some of the movements. And there was some talk about the punches seemed to be a little bit too round. Well, Steel City went in and reevaluated and revamped that part of the game, and they're calling it version 2 of the engine. And according to Habib, he says that he believes that it balanced many aspects of the gameplay with development at this point moving forward. They believe that this change that they've made is going to make the overall gameplay just that much better. When it does launch, it's going to launch on early access on Steam. So I put the link to the game on Steam in the description, and they are encouraging people to go ahead and sign up for it on their wish list so they can get a chance to play it during early access. Now, once it drops during early access, we don't know when that's going to be yet. He did tell me that they expect to have some release date info in March. So information on when the full game will release and also when early access might begin. When they first planned for early access, they wanted to have at least 25 fighters available for people during that trial period. Habib told me that they've already exceeded that goal, and they are, quote, confident that this will continue to increase as they get closer to launch and while they're in early access. He also said the roster is increasing on a daily basis, and they have new deals being finalized with fighters all the time. So right now, they have the full version is set to have more than 100 fighter licenses. And as I mentioned, those will continue to increase. So you may ask, well, how are they going to add new fighters? Well, Habib said through DLC updates, and these should be relatively regularly, they will have new fighters added. I don't know yet if there will be any level of cost to that. It may be free downloads, I'm not sure, but that's how new fighters will be added in. And so one other thing I thought was pretty interesting was that they were already approached by, in Habib's word, a consortium to possibly take over the project. So a collection of individuals or organizations were going to come together, and they made an offer to Steel City. They wanted to take it over and obviously maybe put an even bigger budget behind it. But Habib says that himself and the partners there at Steel City and the people they had working with them decided to turn that down because he said, quote, we felt that it wasn't right for ESBC's long-term vision. If you have an opportunity to have a conversation with Habib about this game, you know that while yes, it's obviously business, this is something, this dude loves boxing. He loves boxing, and he desperately wants to make a great boxing video game that kind of fills this gap that boxing fans have had since Fight Night Champion came out like a decade ago. So from the beginning, I've always had a little bit of some high hopes and maybe even a soft spot for this game because I know that it comes from somebody who really wants it to succeed for the sake of the sport. So I think that their ultimate goal is to make ESBC to boxing what NBA 2K is to basketball. Now that is obviously a tough task, and it would be totally unrealistic to expect that to happen this year. But based on the visuals, the level of detail that's going into it, the passion from the people involved, and some of these partnerships, there is some reason, I think, for some optimism. So all of this, in my opinion, is music to the ears of people who have been wanting a boxing video game. And I'm starting to really believe that sooner rather than later, we'll have an announcement about when this game is coming out, a release date, full roster information, the whole nine. So I appreciate you guys watching as always.